Free agency has definitely changed things up in Dynasty, so we have to go through now and rank the top 24 wide receivers, starting in the S tier, Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. And there's going to be a lot of discourse. I'll go ahead and give you the A tier here. Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's going to be a lot of discourse here. J. Jeff and CD, and Chase absolutely should be up there with them. And I'm going to be honest with you. In most startup drafts, what you're seeing is those three wide receivers go first, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown go fourth, pretty much everywhere. Now, that still can be true with us holding the opinion that Jamar Chase, we would like to see him have a CeeDee Lamb level season like he did last year, an Amon-Ra level season like he did last year.
Winning you a league.
Where he's winning you a league, and then we're going to put him there. But in our personal rankings, there's not a world right now where I'm taking Jamar Chase over CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson. And so because of that, in our rankings, we will have Chase in the A tier. But with Justin Jefferson, again, obviously Kirk Cousins going away does not help Justin Jefferson. It's all going to be dependent on who they draft or who they trade for, I guess. I think it's more likely they're going to move up and draft somebody. That's what the rumors are now. It's going to be wait and see, but I mean, it's not really wait and see because it's Justin Jefferson. And guys, Justin Jefferson is as quarterback proof as it gets. I mean, look at Justin Jefferson's splits in the last, 9 games of the season without Kirk Cousins when Justin Jefferson was healthy. He's still getting targets at an elite rate. He's still scoring fantasy points at an elite rate. Was it as good as with Kirk Cousins? Obviously not. But that being said, Justin Jefferson is a QB-proof wide receiver. And CeeDee Lamb had the season last year that honestly we waited multiple years for him to have. And we kind of held out hope that CeeDee Lamb would have this type of season. And then coming in last year, he is extremely productive. The wide receiver one in PPR leagues. I mean, he scored 403 PPR points. He had 181 targets, guys. CeeDee Lamb was on another level last year. Again, 403 points in PPR leagues. For reference, Jamar Chase's best season in PPR leagues, 302 points. That's 100 more points. 100. Honestly, that's a bigger gap than I thought. That's 100 more points, guys. So, but in Justin Jefferson even. Let's look at Justin Jefferson and Justin Jefferson's best season ever. 368 points. Okay, Justin Jefferson, most targets ever, 184. You talk about CeeDee Lamb, 181. Jamar Chase, most targets ever, 145. Look, I know Burrow has to stay healthy. I know Jamar Chase has to stay healthy. But Burrow has to stay healthy. That's not something you can just write off and say, yeah, because of that, Jamar Chase should be ranked up there. No, Burrow's got to stay healthy. Let's see Burrow stay healthy. Let's see Jamar Chase perform at the level that he's going to. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously, with a ridiculous, you talked about, Jamar Chase's best season ever, 302 points in PPR leagues. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 331 points in PPR leagues this year. So, wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues, had an amazing year. He's wide receiver 7 the year before that. So out of the 3 years he's been in the NFL, 2 of them have been top 8 wide receiver seasons. Amon-Ra St. Brown's playing on one of the better offenses in the NFL. Amon-Ra St. Brown is playing with some of the best weapons and one of the best weapons group in the NFL. So he absolutely deserves to be up here. He has earned it. He was a steal where you got him not only in rookie drafts, but even after his first year in the NFL where he was a wide receiver 2 in his rookie year, we somehow still, including us, were super wrong about Amon-Ra. We should have jumped on Amon-Ra right away. We learned from that, but at the same time, he deserves to be up here. These 4 are the 4 best wide receivers right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And then everybody that follows, it gets a little bit more controversial, but at the same time, there's some good discussion to be had here.
Yeah, and that's going to start at the B tier, and the B tier is going to be Puka Nacua and Marvin Harrison Jr. We actually kind of discussed this earlier, having Puka Nacua at the tail end of that A tier, even with Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra, and Puka, because he had the most successful rookie, sorry, can you tell I'm sick?
Yeah, so Nathan is sick, so you're going to enjoy that.
The most successful rookie season of all time from a wide receiver. Better than Jamar Chase's year. Unbelievable. Incredible. I think there's honestly a lot of solid arguments to be made for Puka being in that A tier, but the one reason we're going to have him at the top of the B tier is from a market value perspective. There are many, many, many people that do prefer Marvin Harrison Jr. over Puka consistently. Puka is the one out. He's the one. He's the outlier from a value perspective where he's not consistently going top end of the second round. He's sometimes falling to the middle of the second or later, and that's enough of a value gap from a market perspective where we're just going to have him at the top of the B tier. But it's nothing against him. And honestly, if it were just up to me, like, look, I would have him in the A tier. But
I think you can make a strong argument for that to be true.
yeah. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., he's here just kind of by default. Like, what do we have to say about him at this point? We've exhausted all talks of Marvin Harrison Jr. during our rookie content, our rookie drafts, our rookie mocks, our rookie everything. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the topic of all conversation. He's the best in this class.
The best
Possibly.
from the last
He's
couple.
the best from the last couple classes. What else do you want me to say? Like,
I think
he is by default a top 6 dynasty wide receiver already. And our discussions and our opinions can be different from where he's ranked, because I think it would take some pretty significant production his rookie season for him to maintain his value. But as it stands, this is where he belongs, and I'm not risking taking any receiver that we have in the C tier that we're going to talk about over him at the moment.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. Well, you have to understand with Marvin Harrison Jr., like, the dude hasn't been drafted. He hasn't played an NFL game. We don't know his landing spot. And also, he's being drafted close to his ceiling. Look at where he's drafted now compared to where Justin Jefferson is being drafted now. Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, look what CeeDee Lamb did last season. We're talking about those top 4 wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb just posted the best finish of any of them this last year. And still he's going maybe 8 picks above where Marvin Harrison Jr. consistently goes to start.
Crazy.
I mean, you're talking about being priced. I mean, that's why Marvin Harrison Jr., in our opinion, he's a really good down tier candidate, like down tiering from the 102 to get the 104 plus, which I did this week. Like, he is being priced very close, but you can't rank him anywhere else because he is that elite prospect. We do need to respect that. Let's drop down to the C tier though, and talk about these guys. Garrett Wilson is going to be at the top of this tier. And Garrett Wilson is a guy that has really impressed given the circumstances. We talk about this a lot. I mean, who was really throwing Garrett Wilson the ball the last 2 years? Well, let's go through them. Like Zach Wilson. Okay, we all know how that's worked out. Who else? Tim Boyle.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco at times. Which
Mike White.
Mike White. None of those I would consider household names. But when you're looking at, one of our previous videos, we talked about wide receivers that finish top 36 in 2 of their first 3 seasons, and the analytics behind that. And those, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 26, wide receiver 21 in his first 2 years. He is in very good company. Analytics suggest that with a better quarterback, Garrett Wilson is going to pop off. As a 23-year-old pick out of Ohio State, I mean, this is a guy that I was very, very high on coming out of Ohio State. And to me, like, given his terrible situation, I think I've been really impressed with Garrett Wilson. I think he's earned this ranking, and I think he could I think his ceiling is that of S to A tier. I really do think so. I think he's that talented. Drake London is going to be next, and this is aggressive, and we mean for it to be aggressive. We're taking a hard stance on Drake London as a player, as a talent, as a prospect, and as a receiver with a new quarterback in Kirk Cousins.
London is getting what we've always wanted to see Garrett Wilson get.
And so
he's just as good of a talent. He got actually higher draft capital. He was drafted over Garrett Wilson in that draft class. And honestly, I don't think you could even say at this point that Atlanta was wrong yet, because he could absolutely show out at a higher level this year.
Let's talk about who's been throwing Drake London the ball. You've been talking about Desmond Ridder, right? You've been talking about Taylor Heineke. Am I missing somebody else there?
Probably some backups in between. Mariota, his rookie year.
Mariota, thank you. That's who I was missing. Wide receivers 31 and 37 finishes. You're talking about finishing as a wide receiver 3 with those quarterbacks in an Arthur Smith offense. Again, context is important when you're ranking and when you're evaluating these players after their first 3 seasons. The context here is that Drake London probably had the worst situation of any young wide receiver in the NFL. It's not even close.
It was maddening.
And he
maddening.
still had 110 and 117 targets. My guys, we look for target hogs in PPR leagues. This is a target hog. Not only does he get a better, more accurate quarterback, but the volume alone that's going to allow Drake London to get even more targets, to perform as an alpha wide receiver, to perform to his draft capital, is enough for us to aggressively rank him higher now in these dynasty rankings than we had him before. Even over the next guy, A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown is a guy that really, like, He's fallen but from an NFL wide receiver standpoint, I mean, he's really freaking good. The dude catches anything within a 10-mile radius of him. When you're looking at the last 2 years from PPR league standpoint, wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6. Now, why A.J. Brown's fallen has a lot to do with the situation around him rather than his actual production. Because when you're looking at his production last year, in what was a lot of people considered, he performed better last year than he did in 2022. He had 13 more targets. He had almost 20 more receptions, 18 more receptions. He had just 40 less yards, and he had 4 less touchdowns. Still, but again, with the targets and receptions alone in a full point PPR league, you're talking about him finishing only 10 points below where he was in 2022, and as the wide receiver 5 overall. He's only 26 years old. He is playing on a good offense, but again, the situation has lended itself to allow A.J. Brown to fall down in dynasty rankings a little bit. You've seen this on crowdsource rankings like Keep Trade Cut, crowdsource rankings like flockfantasy.com/domain. When you go to flockfantasy.com/domain, by the way, you get one of these team blueprints. Also, Mother Flocker March ends this week. As of this video, we have 84 new Mother Flockers. If we reach 100, we stay up all night for a live stream, but you get a blueprint. We will do it on the stream. If you would like us to, we will be with you in your Discord one-on-one as we walk through this team building process with you. You get our rookie draft guide, you get our Discord community, you get the trade calculator, you get all of it. Rankings, all of it. If you play Dynasty, you want to join 300 plus other Dynasty players who are passionate about the game. If you want to join them in playing Dynasty Fantasy Football and making your team better and winning money, flockfantasy.com/domain, use code domain. But like I was saying, A.J. Brown, a guy that's fallen in those consensus rankings. And so naturally, just market value alone and situationally with Jalen Hurts taking a step back, with that offense not looking as good, with the Philadelphia Eagles as a whole not being as good, he's still what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's still our wide receiver 9.
Yeah. And look, there was honestly a direct correlation between the lack of production or the step down of production with A.J. Brown and the Philadelphia Eagles offense as a whole. It was literally immediately after the bye week is when he stopped producing at like the highest possible level. I mean, I remember there was a point during the season where his value had gone up so high that he was like a top 3 dynasty wide receiver.
I remember that.
People were considering it. They're like, is he in the same tier as CeeDee Lamb? Because this was
that just
before
this year?
CeeDee Lamb's going off. Yeah, and that just shows you how reactive we are with different situations. And if I'm being honest, I think when you're looking at the 2022 Super Bowl Eagles,
Nathan, you are so right, dude.
and the last half of 2023 Eagles team, I think there's a really conservative in between that you're going to see for the rest of A.J. Brown's time in Philadelphia. And that probably means that A.J. Brown is still going to be, a consistent mid wide receiver 1, which is, that's going to win you a league. And that's really good value when he's falling to the beginning of the 3rd round sometimes.
Nathan is spot on. If you look at his positional rank over the last 6 months, Luke, if you could put this graphic up for us from Keep Trade Cut, wide receiver 3 in November, held it for a long time. Wide receiver 8 right now. When you're looking at what's contributed to that also, when you're looking at A.J. Brown's season, it was very front-loaded.
Yeah, they just have time people have had time to look at that production and how much it fell off.
Let's look at the last 8 or 9 games here. 1.8 points, 14 points, 19 points, 16 points, 10 points, 14 points, 9 points, and negative 0.1 points. This is not A.J. Brown level, especially looking at the first set of games, 14, 6, 22, 38, 18, 20, 29, 33, 19. Started on a tear. The Eagles as a whole took a step back as the season went on.
It was the entire team. It wasn't A.J. Brown. Like, I don't know if anyone watched those games and was like, hey, A.J. Brown's off.
The one doing it.
Like, he wasn't really. That entire team was off. And Jalen Hurts was starting to really struggle to make basic reads. It was kind of worrying. But all that said, like, it's going to be a new season, a new year. And I think the Eagles are going to be just fine. And honestly, I think they're going to win the division. Hot take. NFC East.
Don't look, and you might know this, but where did Chris Olave finish in PPR leagues this year?
Wide receiver. Oh, it wasn't good, was it? Was it 24?
Chris Olave was wide receiver 16 this year in PPR leagues.
Oh, what? I had 16 in my head, and I was like, it had to have been lower, right?
But it does. But it feels like it's lower, right?
I thought it was lower.
With the public perception around Chris Olave, you would think that it was lower this year. And yes, being tied to Derek Carr, not great. But at the same time, when you're looking at what he's been able to do, and you're looking at the metrics, again, top 36 finishes, 2 of the first 3 seasons. He's 25 and then 16 this year. Yeah. 16, guys. Wide receiver 16, 138 targets, 1,100 yards, and 5 touchdowns this year. I mean, that's on a pretty conservative touchdown count. And the targets alone, again, target hog. But Chris Olave, still 23. Derek Carr will not be there forever. I bet the Saints draft a quarterback next year. And when that happens, Chris Olave's value is going to increase. He is an alpha. He is the one. I don't think they draft over him. I don't think they're going to spend another first-round pick on a receiver anytime soon. Michael Thomas is gone. It didn't really matter before, but now he's gone anyways. Chris Olave, guys, still has a very high ceiling. Now, obviously not the ceiling of a Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, but they've performed similarly over the first 2 years, so we have him here. Malik Neighbors is going to be here next. We can only move Malik Neighbors so far down from Marvin Harrison Jr. because really a lot of people are claiming that they're closer than what people expect, and we're definitely on board with that train of thought.
I'm okay with it, but
I'm taking Neighbors at price right now over Marvin Harrison Jr. all day long.
Right, but with the ranking here, I think it is more us just recognizing that his market value could be a little more volatile depending on landing spot, because I definitely think it is significantly more possible that he ends up to a team like the Giants, who maybe they trade up for him, or maybe he even ends up falling to them somehow. That is absolutely possible. With Marvin, I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going top 5 regardless, and that's why Neighbors is going to be a tier below for now.
And then Tyreek Hill is going to be last in this tier, and Tyreek Hill, a guy that obviously is the best wide receiver in the NFL. He really is, and the best weapon in the NFL. Wide receiver 2, 376 PPR points behind only CeeDee Lamb. He had 171 targets. He had 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns. The dude's a beast. The thing with Tyreek's now 30. Tyreek turned 30. So now, with his value,
big 3-0.
He still is going to be like a top
perpetual
14 dynasty wide receiver right now because he is scoring, that many points per game. But that being said, Tyreek Hill's also made it pretty evident that he's probably going to retire in 2 years. So you do have to plan accordingly without discounting him that much because he is elite and he's going to win you a dynasty league. Tyreek Hill, you know enough about him. We've talked about him for years now. So D tier.
Yeah. D tier, this is where it gets really fun. Rome Odunze is going to be at the top of this D tier. This is another guy that we had a discussion about off camera before we came out with these rankings for this video. Odunze was in the C tier alongside Malik Neighbors. I think the reason we are just going to have him down here is same sort of thing is the way Malik Neighbors has been discussed among many circles is a lot closer to Marvin, whereas we think that Odunze is actually a lot closer to Neighbors, and there's just going to be a lot of differing opinions here. Odunze is going to be he is most likely going to be the third wide receiver off the board, and with that being the case, he likely will get, maybe the not ideal landing spot that we're looking for up there. Look, there's I don't really know what else negative there is to say about Rome Odunze. There really isn't. Like he's a true wide receiver 1. He can be.
Yeah,
he has the ceiling. He has the ability. That's why he's going to be at the top of this tier. Jalen Waddle and Brandon Ayuk. Jalen Waddle is a wide receiver 2. That's why he's behind Rome Odunze, because he doesn't play the wide receiver 1 in his offense. Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 1. Waddle can be productive because of Tyreek Hill, taking a lot of defensive attention. But as long as Tyreek Hill is there, he will have a relatively capped ceiling. Brandon Ayuk, just straight up, hasn't been a consistent wide receiver 1. And what ceiling has he really shown on a consistent basis? We've always known that he has a 35, 40% or 40-point ceiling on every game here and there. But can he do that over the span of 4 weeks? He's never done that before. Now, this was his best year. He looked very productive. He looked like the best wide receiver best wide receiver performance I've ever seen from Brandon Ayuk. He's really matured quite a bit, but I think there's some questions with, will he be with San Fran long term? Will he go to a different team? And that's just kind of where we're at with him right now.
And Brandon Ayuk, you would think with him that he had a top 10 wide receiver season in PPR leagues. Wide receiver 14.
Yeah.
You're talking about guys getting certain hype based on people's agendas. Brandon Ayuk is a guy that will consistently get pushed up boards by dynasty people. And we just have to be careful how we're ranking him.
Yeah.
In the F tier here, Michael Pittman is obviously one of our favorite football players. We are very glad he's back with the Colts. We think the Colts are a good situation for him. We don't think if they draft a weapon, it's going to hurt Michael Pittman at all. We think this would help Michael Pittman's production. We think it could potentially knock Josh Downs, but not Michael Pittman. You're talking about Michael Pittman getting 156 targets last year, finishing as the wide receiver 13 in PPR leagues. He's very good. He's very productive, and he's a target hog. So how can you not love him for Dynasty Fantasy Football?
Yeah.
Great value here. Nico Collins. Look, Nico's good, guys. Nico could easily be the one there in Houston. I think it could be Tank. I think it could be Nico. But Nico finishes the wide receiver 12 overall. He was a wide receiver 1 this year in Dynasty and in Fantasy and PPR leagues. He had 261 points. He had 109 targets. So, when you're looking at these top guys, he's not a target hog. 1,297 yards, 8 touchdowns. Again, the yards, the touchdowns are there. But the targets are good, but they're not elite. That's not elite targets. And so if you wonder why we have some questions about Nico, And that's not to say Nico can't be the wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 1. He clearly can and clearly is. But that being said, Nico's range of outcomes next year is far greater than a lot of the guys going around him, simply based on the fact that Nico Collins' production came largely based on yards and touchdowns instead of getting targets and building off of those with receptions. And when you're evaluating wide receivers in PPR leagues, that's important to remember. But that being said, Nico's a stud, guys. Nico's a stud. Nico could be ranked higher than this next year easily. He's 25, but it doesn't matter. It just straight up doesn't matter. Nico's an alpha.
You want to see the games that he didn't score touchdowns. He scored 14 points, which was good week 1, then 5, 6, 12, 7, 13, 2, and 15. So a lot of hit or miss there.
He didn't break 20.
No.
I mean, that is a significant stat.
Yeah.
And again, we like Nico. Nico's a great
It's
wide receiver.
It's a significant stat when you're talking about him potentially being, an alpha wide receiver, which is, that's been a discussion with him.
Devonta Smith is going to be next. Devonta Smith, wide receiver 2 in his offense. Wide receiver 19 this year, 112 targets. Still very good. Good
Still
touchdowns,
so
good
consistent.
yards. Still very consistent. I like that for him. But being the wide receiver 2, obviously if A.J. Brown lost value, so did Devonta Smith. And Devonta Smith took a bigger hit from a production standpoint than A.J. Brown did this year, for sure, because he had 25 less points in PPR leagues.
Yep.
So
Tank Dell is going to be right after these guys. He will be in the same tier as Nico Collins. We just said this with Nico. Nico could be the one there. It could be Tank. Stroud is good enough, or it could be both. They could both be wide receiver 1s producing, where Nico functions as the true one and Tank Dell is a complementary piece. I really don't know. We really don't know. They could draft a wide receiver day 2. We don't know. I don't know.
We don't know.
So that's why we're going to have them in the same tier. They both showed incredible upside,
Tank was
incredible
ridiculous.
production. Tank was insane as a rookie. Granted, he was 24 years old, and he's an older rookie. He's going to be an older second-year guy. But I don't care because he's tied to C.J. Stroud. Rashee Rice at the tail end of this tier. I think we know what Rashee Rice's floor is, and that's really good because he's going to be that slot wide receiver. He's going to get a lot of those short to intermediate targets. But to me, I don't think Rashee Rice really functions as a true wide receiver 1 for Patrick Mahomes in that offense. I think if their offense showed anything last year, it was that they're still in need for a true alpha, and that Rashee Rice isn't necessarily that. He would have to change his skill set, and the Chiefs, I don't think, drafted Rashee Rice to be what he was in college. They drafted him to play slot, and I think they're going to go with a wide receiver in the draft this year.
All right, the G tier here, very quickly. This is a big tier, but all of this can be explained relatively easily. DJ Moore and T. Higgins are both guys that are playing on decent teams. The Bears will be decent next year, that are playing with other elite wide receivers. So DJ Moore playing with Keenan Allen now. How will that affect him? Hopefully it helps him. But playing with Caleb Williams, that's a boost over Justin Fields.
That's double the passing volume.
It is
right
going to be double,
gate.
yes. And Higgins playing with Chase. Higgins has to stay healthy in his own right.
Yep.
Higgins could get traded. And then you've got a tier of guys here.
They're all in
Jaden
the same
Reed,
tier, yeah.
Zay Flowers, Addison, JSN. The 4 guys from last year.
All very good.
Did one of them separate themselves from the other this year? Not necessarily. Addison maybe did. Addison lost his quarterback. Zay maybe did, but not really from a production standpoint.
Maybe JSN did in a negative way.
Maybe JSN, in our opinion, could easily be left off this list. But we still just are. We believe in JSN the talent, and we believe that Seahawks didn't waste a first round pick on him. And then Brian Thomas Jr., our 4th rookie here.
Yep, he'll belong here.
He'll belong here. I hope we'll see where he goes. And then DK. DK, very consistent, very good fantasy asset. Consistency, if you need that on your fantasy team, DK is the guy to go get.
Yeah.
Honorable mention here, because there are 2 guys we left out that we really could have put on here.
Yeah, it really hurt me not to put Debo on this list. Some of it was because I know we're running out of room on the tier graphic, and we already have way more than 24 people.
True.
But Debo Samuel, he would have to be, in my opinion, I think a tier below that G tier. I don't know if there's any of those guys that I'm not taking or that I'm not taking over Debo Samuel. No. So that's just why he's not on here. But man, I think he's such a good value right now. He's still under contract with the Niners, and jeez, he's so good after the catch. It's unfair.
It is unfair.
And then Stephon Diggs is still tied to Josh Allen. I know a lot of people are downers on him. A lot of people hate him because of what he did last year or didn't do towards the end of the season. Kind of another weird situation. The Bills team did not look very good overall. Josh Allen wasn't playing well because he had to play hero ball. Diggs started having some bad drops at the end of the season. He is still on a ridiculous contract with Josh Allen. He's older. He's a contending piece. Sure, he's going to score you points. So, honorable mention.
Yes, absolutely. All right. there's our top 20. This is hard to rank, guys. Really, with the tiers, you can move them around any order in the tier, and we're fine with it. But the tiers are kind of where we have our breakoffs. Yeah. But I mean, you could rank these guys any way you want, and we honestly wouldn't argue with you. This is pretty subjective, and this is where our gauge right now is on the wide receiver market in Dynasty. Do us a huge favor. 2 things that really help us: like and subscribe, and make sure you head over to flockfantasy.com/domain. Get a team blueprint. Get in and be a part of Mother Flock and March and make us stay up all night on a live stream. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.